into the show, I guess, with when we had our children and just some stuff that was not okay, but I really still didn't really know what was going on. And it became obvious there was a problem with some addiction behavior. It was really showing up in a really troubling way in our lives, in my life, in his life, in our children's life. I had to try and get help for my husband. This person on the end of the helpline said, yes, these are the options available. And then, asked me, and what about you? Do you want to book in for an appointment? And at the time, I was like, there's nothing wrong with me, not offended, but just like, that's not my problem. I'm not my problem. My problem is getting my husband well. We pin all of our hopes on happiness, on life being good again, on our loved ones getting sober. We're like, when that happens, things will be okay. And it's a blimmin' rude awakening to realize that is not it.
When you first initially got that support, what were some of the things that were kind of uncovered? Boom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Real Drug Talk. Now, I'm happy today. I still sound kind of crook, but I'm happy that I feel like I'm in the land of the living again today, which is good. But excuse my croaky voice, everybody. But yeah, excited today to have Amanda Lockyer on the podcast. Did I get that right? I
Yes.
mess up. Okay. Well,
Very good.
How you going, mate?
Yeah, really well. And sorry to hear you've got germs.
Oh, hey, it's the beauty of doing these, internet recorded ones though, where I don't have to give everybody my sickness and we can still do it.
Yes, amazing.
Now, I've been looking forward to chatting with you. I've been following your Instagram content for a little while now, and I just think it's a really interesting, I guess, perspective or really interesting work that you do in the space because there's not as much of it. But there is a lot of people that sort of, I find, that come forward kind of initially wanting help for their loved one or asking questions or whatever. It's not always the person directly affected. It's people around them. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm interested to kind of talk to you about that. So do you want to just give us the 3-minute snapshot of your story? Don't stress. You don't have to keep it to 3. And then we'll kind of branch off that. But just give us a bit of an idea about you and your past and your history.
Yeah, amazing. And thank you for having me. And so grateful to kind of spread the word, share my story if it helps others, why I'm here. So I guess in a nutshell, in 3 minutes, I would say had a normal life, very just 2 parents, went to uni, went overseas, I worked in America after uni. I lived in London. I lived there for 9 years, cracked on with my kind of accounting career and met lots of lovely people, did the whole working overseas, holidays, all the things, and then came back, decided to move to Australia and moved to Sydney, met a lovely guy. We clicked straight away. We then had 2 lovely children, got married, house, all this stuff. And, a beautiful man. And I think some niggly feelings early on, and then what I then look back in hindsight to see possibly big waving red flags of like worrying, concerning behavior. But really at the time, I had no idea. It wasn't in my world.
Yep.
Hadn't, just like a few things didn't make sense, some behaviors. I was just like, that's weird. I don't really understand that, but really had no context. And then, just got really into the shit show, I guess, with when we had our children and just some stuff was just happening that was not okay, but I really still didn't really know what was going on. And then, it kind of became obvious there was a problem with some addiction behavior. It was really showing up in a really troubling way in our lives, in my life, in his life, in our children's life. And that kind of played out. And just when you think things can't get worse, they go ahead and get a whole lot worse. And it just is like this slippery slope. And you think, no, now this is the worst it can possibly get. And then it just goes ahead and gets a whole lot worse. And so
it's a good point, actually. That's one of the really horrible things about addiction, isn't it? Like, a lot of people say that. You kind of think, fuck, this is terrible.
Yeah, truly.
And then it keeps going.
Can't get any worse than this. But yeah, sure enough, that's why, I mean, we can talk about it later on, but this whole fallacy of rock bottom is just nonsense because it can keep getting worse. Anyway, so it did keep getting worse, and eventually, I was just on my knees in this and didn't know what to do, didn't know how to help him, didn't know how to help myself, didn't know what, like where to turn, and so much shame. Obviously, it was just two of us trying to navigate this, two unhealthy people who were not in a good way, trying to navigate something that's so problematic, and we just didn't know what we were doing, didn't have any tools, resources, support around us, and eventually...
Sorry to interrupt, but that's the first thing that's like kind of sparked my curiosity. You sort of said two unhealthy people. So did you consider yourself sort of, I don't know what it was, unhealthy
Not at the time.
Yeah.
Not at the time. At the time, I thought, I'm the one that can help him get better. That's kind of what I thought at the time. And out of the two of us, I was probably the more functional person,
Right.
if you want to say that. I was the one that was still doing the parenting, the responsible one, and was kind of keeping the lights on, but, struggle street and not sleeping, didn't know what to do. And when I look back, I talk a lot about all of my own crazy behaviors, and we can go into that as well. But looking back, like, it was just a crazy time. And how can two people who are not in a good way navigate this and get a good outcome? Like, it just is insane when you look back on it with the value of hindsight. But the actual first step that I took to get help for myself, I was not actually intentionally getting help for myself. I called a helpline to try and get help. And just classic, right? And I see it all the time. I called a helpline to try and get help for my husband, and would just kind of laid out the situation as it was. And this person on the end of the helpline said, yes, these are the options available. And then, asked me, and what about you? Do you want to book in for an appointment? And at the time, I was like, there's nothing wrong with me, And
were you like offended almost?
Not offended, but just like, that's not my problem. I'm not my problem. My problem is getting my husband well.
Yeah.
And I talk about this a lot as well. We pin all of our hopes on happiness, on life being good again, on our loved ones getting sober, doing the thing less, heart reduction, whatever it is. We're like, when that happens, things will be okay. And so in my mind, that was, real. And anyway, I went to my very first kind of counseling appointment, and hand on heart, I fully went in there with the intent to get the magic sauce for how to get my, husband well. Yeah. I was like, cool, they've got the answers. They can just tell me what to do. I'm a good rule follower. I love having the steps to take. Tell me what to do. I will do it. And obviously that's not it. So for my own realization, they asked me some questions about what was going on in life for me, and it then became apparent as the kind of blinkers were taken off that, I need some support for myself as well. This is not okay. And it's not only not okay, it's not sustainable. Yeah. Cannot live like this. So that's how kind of where I got to in the shit show, in the thick of it, and got support for myself, which was absolutely invaluable. And I speak about this often. My only regret is I did not get support for myself sooner. Right. Because that would have helped me, and it might have helped my loved one. Yeah. Sooner.
It's so powerful. I'm excited to dive into a couple of things here because, so we run, a coaching program essentially for people that have the addiction themselves. But obviously, the family is involved so much in that, and it's the number one thing. it's the hardest work, is like trying to, help the family to sort of, get help themselves, or realize that, and I don't know if this was the case for you, but realize that along the way through the addiction, it's kind of filtered out into and created unhealthy dynamics in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
That is kind of in some ways like, fueling the overall situation as well. But it's just so hard to communicate that with families, because as you said, they want to just fix, the problem of their loved one, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it comes from a good place, right? It comes from a good place. Of course, and I think if you've been following me for a while, I don't like labeling people, I don't think that's helpful. So when people start throwing out terms like addicts, enabling, codependence, I just shudder, because I don't think it's helpful. And families, loved ones, just doing their best, but with no tools, no information, because this is truly something that most people probably haven't really navigated before. Good, but there's no rule book here. There's no, do these things, and for sure this is going to help. We're all different. We all tick a little differently. And so it's finding what works for you and your family, and recognizing that you yourself are not to blame for the behavior, but maybe stay curious as to some of the ways in which you may not be exactly helping the situation. And getting help for yourself, right? Because this is so draining. And for me, it showed up in so many ways in my own health, my physical health, my mental health, how I was showing up at work. It cost me, career opportunities, having any drive. I was just, running on empty the whole time. How I parented, when you have nothing in the tank and your pressure cooker is like up to here, any normal kid behavior, it just sends you into a bit of a tailspin. So giving yourself some tools to navigate the craziness over here, so you can show up in a healthy way in other relationships. And addiction is so isolating, with the shame and stigma that is still so prevalent in our society, that it is often seen as a moral failing, rather than, whatever you want to think of it, as a disease, an illness, mental health, pain, solution, whatever it is. It's still so very much seen as a moral failing. So then you, as the loved ones, not only the people that are struggling with the addiction themselves, but the loved ones, we feel judged. We're judging ourselves, we're shaming ourselves, and we're feeling that in society. So hard to reach out to your community, your village, and say, hey, this is going on for me, because ooh, yuck, right? So it's just so isolating, and it just really dips into, so much of your well-being. And so this is why, I kind of got to where I am today, is I was like, this is shit. There is, amazing. There's more and more support available for the people that are struggling with addiction. And, it's still hard to access in terms of, if they want to access it, is it the right fit? There's so many different practitioners, ways and paths out there to choose from. Which one is right? Which one's a good fit? And so, and finding the right fit for you, is it accessible, and all of those things. But I was like, there's no support for the loved ones. And if it is, it's maybe not always effective, and it might not be the right fit. And one of the things that's really important to me is to help people get back to living, to live life. To not let this determine, dominate, be someone's life story. This is a chapter, a paragraph, a sentence in your life. It is not your story. And so working out healthy ways to navigate this for yourself, to be there in a good and healthy way for your loved one, to support them if that's what you want to do and choose to do, and to take care of yourself along the way.
So interesting. So if I can ask to pry a little bit, because I just think people will identify so much, and it will be really helpful. So when you first initially got that support, what were some of the things that you discovered about yourself that, were those, I don't know what you call them, unhealthy habits, behaviors, ways of thinking, ways of communicating. Yeah, like what were some of the things that were kind of uncovered for you?
I should have brought my list. So, I was, with addiction, we know addiction lies, right?
Yeah.
We know why addiction lies. And I think after being lied to so much and like having someone you love lie to your face
Yeah.
and then kind of turn it on you that why would you think that? Of course I'm not doing this. There's nothing to see here.
It's intense, isn't it?
It's like, so you start to doubt yourself, right? You're like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you're right. That doesn't make sense. And yeah, like maybe I just, like all the gaslighting, manipulating the lies. And so as a result of that, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust them. So one of the things I did is, you start procuring evidence to support what you actually know. So how that looked for me is I would like go into my big rubbish bin outside, gathering evidence.
Yeah.
I would go into the shed when we used to have a shed in the backyard and go into all the little hidey holes that I knew the stuff was in, and the bags under here, under there. I would sniff dirty laundry. I looked in the back seat of cars, under the seats, and all the hidey holes. And I drove around our neighborhood looking for my loved one when they weren't home, I went into places where I knew they would be to try and find them, to bring them home. I was all into the bank statements, screenshots, big angry circles of cash being withdrawn at, unusual times of the day, and shaming, name calling, yelling, threatening behavior of my own, saying, if you do this, I will do this. And, that's not nice.
And it sounds like before you know it, if all this stuff's starting to play out, and as you said, it's totally understandable why you would do that. But before you know it, your whole life becomes about the addiction as well, right?
Totally. And another one that just popped to mind, because obviously I don't do this stuff anymore, but I was invading someone's personal space, like privacy. I was logging into emails, phones, reading messages, going into backpacks, going into wallets, like, oh my goodness. And that's totally against who I am.
Right.
I have not spent my life, even in juvenile, adolescence, adulthood, going into people's mobile phones, searching in people's trash, going through people's pockets. Like, I have never done that, but this is what it does.
Yeah.
And I lied, and I not, you become totally. You behave in a way to try and outsmart addiction. So I did things like I would not tell my loved one exactly where I was in terms of like coming home from work in the day, because I didn't want to give him a chance to like quickly stash. I wanted to catch him in the act. Or not, so he couldn't plan to do the things that, he was doing because he knew I was going to be away for a certain amount of time. I sneaked down the path of my own side of my own house. I peered in the window from outside of my own house. Like, I bloody live there. Just go through the front door, but you just end up, doing all these crazy things. And you behave in a way that is not really who you are, which is why it feels so yuck.
Right.
And not only did I lie to my loved one, I lied to the people around me to try and cover up the behavior.
Yeah.
Because of the shame, the stigma. Like, we know why we lie, to try and cover up so that people wouldn't judge him, judge us, judge our family, ostracize us. And to try and like soften that blow, and just completely behaving in ways that are not in alignment with who I am.
So this might sound like an obvious question for some, but I think for others that are listening and are sort of going through this at the moment with their loved one, obviously the impact that it has on your own sort of self-worth, I guess, and how you feel about yourself. But why else is that, checking the bins, going through the shed, trying to catch them in the act, all that kind of stuff? Why is that actually unhealthy and the wrong way to go about it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
you do it to try because you're being lied to. So you're like, no, I do know what's going on here. Look at the evidence I have collected to, like as if you're preparing for some kind of court trial. And you're doing it to try and, I think, trust in yourself. Yes, this is happening, because you have lost trust in yourself to like, yes, I now believe this is happening because I have all this evidence. And also you want to bring this evidence to your loved one. Look, see, it is what I said it is. Do you think this is okay? To try and get them to understand that this is happening. You can't deny it anymore. Let's just call it what it is. And it's not healthy because you don't trust yourself to know what you know.
Right. Yeah.
And that is what I encourage people when they come and do the work in my program. We want to rebuild that trust with yourself.
Yeah.
So what I share with people a lot, and it's just my own humble opinion, that the biggest loss here in addiction is not necessarily loss of trust with other people. It's loss of trust with yourself.
Right.
That you don't know what you know, that you don't see what you see.
Yeah.
Because if you don't trust in yourself to know what you know, to see what you see, you then don't know the next step.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know the action to take. So that's why this is a circus and chaos, because you don't trust yourself to know what you know. So therefore, well, what's my next step? If I don't really know what I know, what do I do?
Yeah.
So it's really disempowering.
Very interesting. Yeah. It's you make so many good points. Now, the most difficult question, and we'll stick to you because I understand that it's probably a different journey for everyone. And I might be assuming something here, but has it kind of been like a happy outcome in terms of the relationship with that loved one? No. You guys stay together, or okay?
No.
Okay.
It hasn't been a happy outcome, and it's devastating, right? And that's the price.
Right. Yeah.
And and this is what everyone wants. We want the happy ending, the happy outcome, the good news story.
Yeah.
And I wanted so much for that to be the case in my life, and it wasn't. And, there's a lot of grief that goes with that. And what I would say to people listening, you can only do your part.
Yeah.
And I can put my hand on my heart. I can look myself in the mirror at the end of each day and know that I did my best.
Yeah. 100%.
I wasn't doing my best a few years ago when I was all into the trash can and the snooping and the shaming and all that. That was not my best. That was what I had at the time. So, but once I started on this, getting support for myself, getting new tools, getting new strategies, and stepping into that, I know I did my best.
Yeah.
But a relationship is two people.
And that's the interesting thing. And I think it's one of the biggest things that you learn to accept as a family member going through this. Like I've said this before, that even for me, so obviously I went through addiction, but later on down the track, I've had family going through addiction as well. And even though I'm meant to be the professional and know these kinds of things, I found myself just going into doing a lot of the stuff that you were kind of talking about. And then just going, what the fuck am I doing? And it's just that whole process of like learning to kind of accept that you hope for a good outcome, but at the end of the day, you can only control the controllables. And at the end of the day, that's only you, really.
Yeah.
And you hope that has an influence, but it might not always. So what I was going to ask you was...
But I just want to, on that point there of influence, I believe, you can have such a positive influence. And if you scroll back on my Instagram a few years ago, it was, you can only do you, all of that. And that's true. And if you are better in yourself, if you trust yourself to know what you know, if you know what you stand for, if you know who you are, if you can build up your self-confidence again and get the support around you, you are better to support your loved one, whether it's up close and personal or from afar. Don't give away your power to think that you completely can't do anything. You can influence, you can support, you can cheer on. And even when I am still experiencing some tricky behavior, I choose how I show up. to that situation.
Yeah.
And that helps me. And it helps them, helps my kids. I choose how I show up. I dig deep. I remind myself who I am, what's important to me. And I'm not perfect. I will fall and falter along with the rest of them. But how I show up helps me and it helps them. So if they're not in a good way, I choose how I show up and that helps the situation.
Yeah.
Where if I completely abandon myself, abandon my values, abandon what I stand for, then we're back in the circus on the roller coaster.
100%. So that's what I was going to ask you, just kind of going back to when you started getting some of the tools and support, you stopped the stuff that, you felt was unhealthy. So that's the part that most people find so tricky. Like, what does that actually look like? Is it sort of setting, some lines in the sand or boundaries with yourself? Is like, these are the values I'm going to live by. And if these get crossed, these might be some of the consequences. Is it that kind of stuff to start reestablishing the trust with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And to ask yourself, like, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I? What do I stand for? And let that be your North Star.
Yeah.
And so if respect is something that's really important to you and a core value of yours, is it respectful to search through someone's bag? Is it respectful to, be digging around someone's private property? And if kindness is something that's important to you, is it kind to be shaming someone, to call them names, to ignore their phone calls and not let them know in a kind way that you don't accept calls at 2 a.m. or you're not speaking to someone if they are going to speak that way to you? Let your core values be what you stand for, be your North Star. And when you are behaving in these unusual ways that served you in survival mode and when you didn't know any better, ask yourself, are these in line with my core values? Are these in line with what's important to me? And if not, stop doing them. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And there'll be people listening to this going, but how? And I get it. It is hard, but it's not serving you.
Yeah.
It is not serving you. Notice how you feel when you are deep into someone's private email, phone, whatever it is. You don't feel good.
Yeah.
You feel yuck. So stop doing things that make you feel yuck. And whether you do that stuff or not, it's not going to change the behavior of your loved one.
Yeah.
You stacking up the bottles or stacking up the paraphernalia or whatever it is for them to see, taking photos, sending it to them, letting them know how furious you are with all of that is not going to help.
Yeah.
So let's find stuff that's going to help and help yourself.
Yeah. So interesting. And this is another big, tough question, I know. So I guess it's different for everyone. But for you, when you started doing those, acting kind of differently, and I imagine along with that, say if it's respect. So you stopped acting in that way towards your loved one. But then I imagine that sort of dictates, well, I need to be treated with respect and this is what I'll accept as kind of behavior towards me or whatever it is. How did you then establish for yourself, once you started doing those things, what the boundary was of kind of like enough's enough? Like you've sort of stepped over that line and that, if you want to call it that boundary or whatever value that I've set. How did you go about kind of getting to that place where you go, maybe enough's not the right language, but saying that's not okay and the consequences.
Honestly, it's a slow burn, and I talk about this type of work. It's no one thing that's going to get you, like this is true for everybody, right? It's not just changing your friends. So if you're struggling with addiction, it's not just changing your friends that's going to help you. It's not just going to the gym that's going to help you. It's not just whatever it is, going to therapy once a week, whatever. Drinking peppermint tea in the mornings is not going to change in and of itself your life. It is all the things working together. So you've got to build the house. It's the foundations. You don't have a house without the roof, the ceilings, the walls, the windows, or whatever. So it's all these things working together. And you kind of got to start somewhere. So starting with your values. And respecting yourself. We teach others how we want to be treated by how we treat ourselves. So if you're giving yourself the leftovers in terms of your time, your energy, you're teaching others. If you take life scraps, you're teaching others, you take scraps.
Yeah.
So start treating yourself as a priority.
Yeah, 100%.
And from that, you will build what's okay with me, what's not okay with me, how will I be spoken to, how will I not be spoken to, what conversations will I participate in, what conversations won't I. And it's respecting yourself. That's the start. And if I think back to when I first really started doing my own, like I was doing the counseling therapy for, a number of years ago. And then, I had a bit of a lapse in my own well-being a while back, and I was giving myself the scraps. I was giving everything of what I had to everyone else, my kids, my family, community, overextending in all the areas. So I wasn't treating myself with respect. So, hard to command respect from others when you don't even respect yourself. So start with yourself.
Yeah.
How would you treat yourself if you were a priority?
Yeah.
Start there. And then, because, we hear about boundaries all the time. Go and set some boundaries, like 100%. But
What
how?
does that mean?
How? When you don't value yourself, when you don't think, I'm bloody amazing and I bring it all to the table, so I'm not putting up with this crap. If you don't think that, you're like, I'm just going to, and you're just flip-flopping and faffing around, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So for me to say to someone, go set some boundaries, you deserve it. Like, they don't even know they deserve it. So it's building yourself up, build up your self-confidence, build up your own view of yourself. And it's going to be confronting to recognize what you really think of yourself at the moment, because addiction does that. It really dampens the self-esteem, the self-worth, what you think you deserve in life, what you think you can achieve in life, what you think to expect from other people, love, care, people showing up for you. It really does dampen all of that. So start there. Start with your values, build up your self-worth, and treat yourself as a priority. And when you do that, you will then command others treat you with the respect that you treat yourself.
Yeah, I love it. It's so on point, and I don't say this to like kind of fearmonger to anyone. It's just the truth. I've seen it a lot in our like private practice and just over the years. Even if the loved one does go through the recovery process and they do achieve recovery and things change in their life. I've seen it a lot with family members, particularly, to be honest, with sort of parents and their kids, where the person will, inverted commas, get better and have improvements in their life, but the parent, doesn't do any of this kind of work for themselves, again, which is understandable, and I know why it happens, but they then have, like, I've seen it so much, they then have this like massive crash, whether it's sort of some sort of breakdown for themselves because everything just goes thud, or there's like sickness that happens, or there's conflict that is created longer term in the relationship or in other relationships, and it ends up actually being the same process for the loved one as it is for the person going through the recovery process in terms of like addiction, that, getting the solution doesn't make your life better, as you said earlier on. And so do you see that as well?
And I speak about it because I had never intended to only support women and partners, spouses, but that's kind of where I've ended up, and that's all good. That might change again in the future, but I speak to women in their relationships, and it's destination happiness. People think, and wholeheartedly, I 100% thought this myself, right? Absolutely. I'll be happy when they are, and like you said, in inverted commas, well. When they're sober, when they stop doing those things, that is when I'm going to be happy. That's when all the good things are coming into our lives. That's when things get back on track and we live the life that we were kind of thought we were going to live, when they stop doing the thing.
Yeah.
And it's a blimmin' rude awakening to realize that is not it.
Yeah.
And I see it a lot in people that I speak to as well. And one particular client recently, she joined my program. Her husband was 18 months into his recovery.
Yeah.
Doing all the good things. Like, she told me what he was doing. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Good on him. Really getting at it, doing the good things. Amazing. Wow. And then she told me what she was doing. And I was like, oh, and she's still living like survival mode in active addiction. And what I say to people, and like you said, not just scaremonger, but when you give yourself the tools, you have to recognize you're in a different phase. If your loved one is in recovery, that's different. It needs different from you, right? It needs different from you. And if you give yourself the tools, if you build yourself back up again, if you back yourself, you trust yourself, you've given yourself the tools and strategies to navigate what life throws at you, you trust yourself again, you're back to your goodness, you've got your North Star, amazing. If something does happen, it doesn't even have to be addiction, it can be some other life thing that's not great. If you're good in yourself, you have the ability to walk over to that little fire in the corner of your room, or that little trash can, rubbish bin fire, and calmly put it out and walk away. Or you can walk over with your can of gas, petrol, and really set that shit on fire and burn the whole house down. And this woman that I spoke to, whose husband is 18 months into recovery, the way she is behaving, that's not going to work, like he is behaving, he's trying to rebuild the trust, but she wasn't giving him the opportunity to be trustworthy. Still, she didn't trust herself, she didn't trust him, and I get it, but this is what you wanted. You wanted him to be sober and do the good things, and now he is, and you're going to be the one that burns the house down. And it is a hard thing. And like I said at the start, I'm not into labels. I am human first. Let's just speak about people. We're all just people. And I don't have the lived experience of having a physical or psychological addiction to, substances, behavior, whatever. I don't have that. But it is hard. It is hard. And so anyone that can get the support they need and do the good things for themselves and get loving themselves again and come through that, that's amazing. And we need to do it too. Change is hard for everybody, right? Right. It's hard for everybody. And all the things that served us in the past, and we were just doing our best in survival mode, is not sustainable. It's not going to serve us if we want to live a good life.
I must say, it's really, I can't talk today. Admirable. I'm not even, you know what I mean? It's
admirable.
That's it. I admire you. It's I got so much snot in my face. I can't even get the words out. So, I really admire you for. Look, and again, I don't want to phrase it this way, but again, inverted commas, as you said, it hasn't been the fairy tale ending in terms of the stereotypical way that you might have hoped that this played out at the start of your journey. And I think it would be very easy for you at the end of all of that to just kind of take your bat and your ball, be resentful, kind of complain about it to people close to you and move on with your life. And that would probably be acceptable, and people would kind of go, we get it. But I really admire how you've kind of taken that journey and decided to try and help others through the process. It sounds like a bit of it's been such a massive self-development process for you.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a gift wrapped in shit, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. And I speak about that often as well. I can't imagine the person I would have been had I not come through this in the way that I have. And, the person I am today, the parent I am, is probably a lot different to what I would have been had I not gone down this path. And it's not that you're going to be grateful, but it's just to see there as a silver lining. And not everyone is going to do that. A lot of people do sit in bitterness and resentment, and completely understandable, but how is that serving you?
Yeah.
And addiction does not discriminate, right? It does not give a shit if you went to private school, public school, had 2 parents, 4 parents, 1 parent, no parents. like were not that well off or super wealthy, went to university, it does not give a shit.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. And that's, I think, why I have continued, because I'm so passionate about helping people move through this, regardless of what happens with their loved one.
Yeah.
Don't wait for them to start. You don't even need to wait for your loved one to say, I've got a problem, for it to be a problem for you. If it's causing you problems, it is a problem for you. And you'd see that in your work as well. There's no comparison here, right? And one of my favorite quotes from Theodore Roosevelt, comparison is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
We have this image in our mind, like most people do, it's going to generalize here, of what addiction looks like. It is typically a homeless person on a park bench with a paper bag of something.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is.
Yeah.
It is someone who goes to work every day, someone that has what looks to be a great life. It's the average person just doing the average normal things of day-to-day stuff, and they've got some struggles going on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a problem for that individual person for it to be a problem for their loved ones. If it's a problem for you showing up in your life, it is a problem for you. And I would encourage anyone that's thinking, yeah, that is a problem, to start thinking about getting some support for yourself, whatever that looks like. And to not compare. Someone doesn't have to be drinking 2 bottles or 3 bottles of wine every night. Start drinking at 8 a.m. in the morning, or start doing this line, that line, be injecting, whatever it is, be at the gambling pokies when they open up at 10 a.m. for it to be a problem.
Yeah.
It is a spectrum, and just tune into yourself. If you feel this is a problem for you, it's a problem for you.
Yeah.
And not to compare to like the worst. And then what we're speaking about at the start of the rock bottom fallacy, it can always get worse.
Yeah.
And
so
it probably will.
Explain, like, why is that a fallacy?
I think, and this is common narrative, I don't know where you stand on this, but people will get help when they hit their rock bottom.
Yeah.
No.
Bullshit.
That is bullshit. Stop. And it kind of gives people, in my humble opinion, gives people permission to stand back, dust their hands off, like, I'm just waiting for them to get their rock bottom. Like, bullshit.
Yeah.
It is the hope of better. It is the hope of a better life that encourages people to change. Not to say that, there is an element of, this is shit now, I don't want to go down this road anymore, but not rock bottom. You know what rock bottom is? Death.
Yeah.
Because you can always, like we've already said at the start, you can always dig a bit deeper.
Yeah.
Someone loses their job, you think, or kind of gets encouraged to quit because they've missed so much work, and you think, far out, man, that must be your rock bottom. Someone has a DUI, totals their car, gets like a criminal record, they might go to incarcerated for a bit, and you think, blimey, surely that's their kind of moment that they think, this is a problem for me. And someone could be, they lose their house, or they get kicked out of their family home and they're living out of their car on the street, and you think, wow, that must be it. And it's not it,
I completely agree with you. It's really interesting. I always tell people that, because there's a few things with it, but I always tell people, obviously in Australia, we're really blessed to live in, really largely amazing, like, living conditions and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, like overseas in different countries, there's different living conditions that, definitely aren't as good as here, with clean water, all that stuff. But people still live there and adapt and get used to it and are sort of somewhat happy on their level living in that kind of space, or can be. And it's sort of the same with addiction. Like, a jarring experience can create a little bit of a window for someone to ask for help for a period of time. Not always, but people get used to stuff, and as you said, it kind of just becomes like the next, they might be really unhappy in that place, but they learn how to live in that, that space, and things can keep going,
Yeah.
It's,
and I think I speak about from, people from in my shoes, you get used to your new normal.
That's right. 100%.
And it's a very slow decline. And, I say to people, if you would have rewound 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because often it is years before people kind of reach out for help, to today, what would that look like? And they'd be like, oh my God, no way. But it's because it is this slow, insidious decline in your situation that you start normalizing a new thing. Oh, well, they passed out at 9:00 tonight instead of 8:00. So that's kind of a bit better. Or we've gone a whole week with no knock on the door from the police, or I've known where they are every night this week. So that's a win. It's you. They haven't lost their job, or, we've paid all our bills this month. So, amazing. But it's so stressful, and you start to acclimatize to your new normal.
Yeah.
That's not normal, right? And it shouldn't be your normal. Like, want better for yourself, demand better for yourself and of yourself as well, So in that situation, and change is hard, and this is our new comfort zone, unfortunately. So to start stepping out of that comfort zone is going to be hard. And like I said, stepping away from those unhealthy behaviors that I used to do is hard, because those became my normal. They were my comfort, little like security blanket of check all these things in the corner of my house every night. Like, yep, okay, and it becomes a new normal, becomes new comfort zone. So we want to be challenging that. And does this serve me? So I ask people that come to my program all the time, does this serve me? Is this the life I want to live? Is this okay for me? And yeah, things can always get worse. And going back to like the North Star, what are your core values? If we can lead with humanness and lead with humanity, we're all just people. We're all just hopefully doing our best. Show people that they are loved.
Yeah.
Hold your boundaries where you need to hold them for behavior you don't want to be around. I'm not saying don't do that. Do that, because it means you're staying well in yourself. But let people know they are loved. Let people know they are important to you. Send them, sometimes I get pictures, like memories pop up from a few years ago, a happy memory, and I'll share that with my person.
Yeah, love it.
Because even though I'm not perfect, this is what keeps me operating from the good zone, right? Yes, there's disappointing behavior. Yes, I am grieving. Yes, I feel frustrated sometimes. But if I can dig deep and let my values lead me, remind people they're worth the effort.
Yeah.
That is what is going to help people.
You're a star, mate. It's the overall addiction space is a challenging one to work in, but I think within that challenging space, you work in what I think is the hardest space, which is the loved ones and helping people to work through their stuff. So it's very important work, from my opinion, and there should be a lot more investment and funding that goes into that space, because I think overall, and I always look to like the suicide prevention sector. They had a big initiative of helping family members and loved ones kind of upskill, and the direct impact that it had on the people around them was huge, because the influence can be massive, as we talked about before. So how do people, if they're picking up what you're putting down and they're relating and they want to listen a little bit more, where can they follow you and where can they find out a bit more about you to get in contact?
Yeah, amazing. And I mainly hang out on Instagram at Addiction Makes 3, THREE, or
name,
you
by the
can
way.
find me. What's that? Yeah. That's a whole nother episode. Or on my website at addictionmakes3.com.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I hope everybody connected with that, and stay safe, everybody, and we'll be vibing in your ears again soon.
Thank you.
Peace.